Hello, the article I picked as far as reviewing toxic substance was asbestos, and my article is asbestos exposure and cancer risk from the National Cancer Institute. Asbestos is a group of minerals that occur naturally as bundles of fibers. Those fibers are heat and fire resistant and don't conduct electricity, therefore, it's used widely in the industries. Asbestos has been around since 1800s in North America. Many construction companies use it for strengthening cement and plastic. Other uses are for insulation, roofing, fireproofing, and sound absorption. The car industry uses asbestos in vehicle brake shoes and clutch pads. Asbestos can be found in floor tiles, paints, paint coatings, adhesives, and plastics. In 1989, EPA banned all new uses of asbestos to be used anymore. However, any uses that were used prior to 1989, you're still able to use those. The EPA mandated all school systems to inspect their buildings for any presence of asbestos and either eliminate that or either reduce exposure, block those areas off where nobody's around them. Health hazards. Anytime somebody's exposed to asbestos, meaning the area where the asbestos is the fibers are released into the air, and then at that time that puts us at risk if we inhale it or breathe it in, that it gets trapped in our lungs and remains there. Over time, those fibers may accumulate, causing scarring or inflammation in the lungs, causing future problems down the road. Asbestos has been classified as a human carcinogen, meaning it's cancer causing by the EPA. It can also cause asbestosis, meaning inflammation of the lungs, causing more lung issues. The article is interesting because it says at some point in time everybody's exposed to asbestos at some level. The bigger problem is most people that suffer issues is when you have consistent, recurrent, exposures to it. Not just a one-time issue. It's when you're constantly around it all the time, inhaling it. So that becomes most problems with people that work directly with involved materials. So it's constant, repeated exposure. That's when you have more of the issue. One interesting thing I found through reading the article was the World Trade Center. When all that stuff happened, the attack was in 2001. They used asbestos with the construction of the North Tower. So any of those people that worked on the cleanup crew, whether it be firefighters or paramedics or nurses, anybody that was there during that tragedy got exposed to the asbestos. So it was interesting because it said 28% of the 70% that suffered from new or worsening respiratory problems, 28% of those had prior respiratory issues, but 61% of those had not had any respiratory problems whatsoever prior to that cleanup that they were part of. Now, granted, that could be from any of the other debris or something like that from the issue, but that was just pretty interesting information, I thought. 61% is a big percent to have new symptoms. Another interesting fact I found through reading this article is it may take 10 to 40 years for symptoms to show that you're having problems after your first exposure. So that's a long time before you might show any kind of symptoms whatsoever that you're having some issues from asbestos exposure. Smoking in combination with asbestos, of course, shows a higher risk of lung cancer. If anyone feels that they have been exposed, they need to notify their doctor and let the doctor do some blood tests. Other symptoms that may start happening once you've been exposed that alerts you that there's a problem going on is shortness of breath, persistent cough, blood in the sputum, pain or tightness in the chest, swollen neck and face, loss of appetite, weight loss, anemia, and fatigue. Obviously, changeable behaviors would be prevention, avoidance to stay away from anything that may have asbestos. The byproduct is sometimes we don't know when we're exposed to those type things. The article mentioned, if you live in an older house and you see paint chipping, or anything like that that's going to cause problems, just to take care of it before it gets to any further degradable chippings or wood or anything like that may have those type debris. The other thing is protection. OSHA's come out with many standards as far as working in an environment with this type of equipment or anything that may have asbestos, that they have, guidelines on personal protective equipment that you need to wear as far as protection where you're not inhaling it or anything while you're having repeated exposure to that. As far as looking up the article, I simply just Googled toxic substances and asbestos and come up with this article. Pretty interesting. I've heard of asbestos, but never really, studied it or had the interest, honestly, to research it. But after reviewing like I said, the things that stood out to me were the World Trade Center. That was very interesting, I thought, and all those people that were there assisting with that and what exposures they had. And also that it can take 10 to 40 years to show up your symptoms. I mean, that's a long time to not know if you're going to have problems down the road or not from exposure to it. So that was very interesting. I think that's it. Thank you.